Jeremiah Cole learned early that silence was not the absence of hostility. It was its most refined form. The lecture theater at Ashbourne University was designed to amplify authority. Tiered seating curved inward like a tribunal. Oak paneling held warmth but carried echoes. Portraits of former chancellors lined the upper balcony, all framed in gold, all certain of their place in history. Jeremiah had counted them once, 23 portraits. None looked like him. Professor Alistair Hargrove stood at the center with the stillness of a man who never needed to compete for attention. His suit was always the right shade of gray, his hair always in place, his voice measured, almost kind. "Standards," he said, adjusting his cufflinks, "are what separate opportunity from entitlement." The words floated lightly, but they landed with weight. A few students in the front rows smiled faintly. Edward Langley, seated center left, crossed his arms with quiet satisfaction. Edward was legacy in human form, the kind of student whose surname already sat comfortably on campus. His father funded a wing. His grandfather's portrait hung upstairs. He did not have to prove he belonged, because the building had been built to recognize him. Jeremiah sat 3 rows from the back, notebook open, pen moving in neat lines. He wore the same charcoal jumper he wore every Wednesday. It was the only one that still held its shape at the cuffs. He had chosen his seat carefully during his first week, close enough to engage, far enough to avoid the spotlight. He had learned quickly that visibility here was not neutral. The diagnostic problem appeared on the projector. Non-linear optimization under constrained boundary conditions, presented as foundational. It was not foundational, it was weaponized. Jeremiah recognized the structure immediately. He had seen a similar configuration late one night in the library, the heating already off, the security guard asking him twice if he was finished. The constraint was misdirected deliberately. Anyone applying standard undergraduate technique would collapse the function incorrectly. It was a trap disguised as a warm-up. Hargrove let the room stare at it for a moment. Then he spoke again. "Mr. Cole," he said calmly, "you seemed particularly eager in last week's seminar. Would you care to demonstrate your approach?" There it was. Public selection. Phones tilted subtly. Jeremiah felt heat rise behind his ears. Refusal would confirm suspicion. Acceptance might confirm stereotype. The room was waiting, not for an answer, but for a story. The scholarship kid who overreached, the access intake who thought he could match them. He stood anyway. The walk to the board felt longer than it should. The chalk was brittle in his fingers. He wrote the constraint exactly as shown. Paused, reread it, erased a segment, a soft laugh from the second row. He ignored it. He rewrote the inequality, reframing the boundary as elastic rather than fixed. He slowed his breathing deliberately. His voice remained even. If the boundary is treated as variable rather than static, the minimization simplifies under substitution. He corrected an exponent, adjusted a term, reworked the structure. The laughter stopped. Silence took its place. Not approval, evaluation. He corrected one line, then paused again. The pause mattered. Instant genius reads like fantasy. Earned clarity reads like truth. Jeremiah looked at the constraint the way he looked at everything now, like it could turn on him if he got sloppy. He wrote the next step, then the next. By the time he stepped back, the room had shifted. The smirking student in the front row was no longer smirking. The teaching assistant, Dr. Mara Patel, had stopped typing. Even the students who did not understand the maths could feel the momentum change. It is hard to mock someone when your own certainty starts to wobble. Hargrove approached, hands clasped behind his back. He studied the board carefully, like a curator examining a painting. "Interesting attempt," he said. "Attempt." Jeremiah turned. "Is it incorrect?" he asked. Hargrove smiled faintly. His smile never reached his eyes. "Not incorrect, but incomplete, which can sometimes be more dangerous." A ripple of relieved laughter spread through the room, a collective exhale. The professor had given them permission to stop being unsettled. He had restored hierarchy without needing to deny Jeremiah's competence outright. Jeremiah returned to his seat aware that survival was not victory. After the lecture, Edward intercepted him near the exit. Edward's face held that polite, clean expression of someone who had never been told no by anything that mattered. "Bold move," Edward said pleasantly. "Most people learn quickly not to overreach." Jeremiah said nothing. Edward's smile remained fixed. "Reputation here is delicate," Edward added. "It would be unfortunate if yours developed too fast." The tone was friendly. The message was not. That evening, Jeremiah emailed his full derivation to Mira. Timestamp 1842. He also uploaded a copy to the university's independent archive server. He did this with everything now, not from paranoia, from pattern recognition. Jeremiah worked nights at the library. He shelved books in silence, scanned student cards at the door, watched people laugh softly in groups that always seemed already formed. Sometimes, late, when the last students left and the automatic doors clicked shut, he sat at the desk and did his own work under the fluorescent lights. He liked the way the library did not care who you were. The books were indifferent. The paper was fair. He sent Mira another message that night, short and neutral. "Here is the full working from today. Let me know if you want any clarification." Mira replied an hour later. "Received. Thank you. Keep copies. Keep copies. Noted." 3 days later, he received an email from the Scholarship Review Committee. Subject: Provisional Academic Monitoring. The language was neutral. The implication was not. Concerns had been raised regarding academic readiness for advanced theoretical modules. The meeting was scheduled for Thursday. Jeremiah attended alone. He wore his cleanest shirt, the one he saved for job interviews and funerals. The committee room was polished and bright, the kind of room that made you lower your voice instinctively. Professor Hargrove sat beside the committee chair. Edward was present as a student representative. Jeremiah understood the architecture immediately. The chair spoke calmly. "We are committed to ensuring scholars are not placed under undue strain." Undue strain. "My grades are above departmental average," Jeremiah replied evenly. "Yes," the chair said, glancing at a file, "but academic culture extends beyond grades." Culture. Hargrove nodded slightly, as if speaking from concern. "Capability is evident," he said, "but sometimes enthusiasm can resemble instability. Students from non-traditional backgrounds often carry a great deal of pressure. We must be careful not to set them up to fail." The phrasing was almost compassionate, but it positioned Jeremiah as fragile. Edward leaned forward slightly. "I've noticed," he said smoothly, "that some students become overly performative when they feel they have something to prove." Performative. Jeremiah kept his face steady. The chair folded her hands. "Your scholarship remains active," she said, "but under observation." Observation meant vulnerability. One allegation could tip it. Funding meant housing. Housing meant survival. Jeremiah left the room with a printed notice in his hand and the distinct sensation that the air in the corridor had thinned. That night, he went home to his tiny room in student accommodation and stared at the notice until the words blurred. His phone buzzed with a message from his mom. "You good, Jay?" He wanted to say yes. He did not. He typed back, "All good, just busy." He lay on his bed fully clothed, listening to the building creak, and felt the first real edge of fear. Not fear of failure. Fear of being pushed off the board entirely and told it was for his own well-being. The next morning, the rumor began circulating. Jeremiah had received external assistance on the optimization problem. The phrase was careful, clinical, external assistance. He heard it in a hallway, 2 students ahead of him, laughing softly. "Apparently he's got a private tutor," one said. "He must," the other replied. "No one from that intake solves that stuff clean." Jeremiah kept walking. He heard it again in a study session. Edward mentioned it as if it were an innocent observation. "Not all of us have access to private coaching," Edward said lightly, smiling at the group. "Must be useful." Jeremiah's chest tightened. If excellence could not be dismissed as incompetence, it would be reframed as dishonesty. 2 days later, the email arrived. Subject: Academic Integrity Inquiry. Allegation: Unauthorized external input and derivation work. Jeremiah did not panic. He printed every timestamp, every draft, every archive log. He pulled up the metadata from his laptop files. He created a timeline, not emotional, just sequence. The hearing was scheduled for Monday. The integrity officer examined his documents in silence. She was mid-career, careful, not unkind. She had the manner of someone trained to treat every situation as potentially explosive. "These are independently archived?" she asked. "Yes," Jeremiah replied. "Why archive separately?" "Because documentation protects clarity." Hargrove leaned back, hands folded. "Excessive documentation often suggests insecurity," he said calmly, "or anticipation of conflict." Jeremiah met his gaze. Preparedness does not equal guilt. Silence lingered. The officer closed the file. "We find insufficient evidence of misconduct," she said. "The allegation dissolved, but the atmosphere did not. It never does. An accusation can be dismissed officially and still leave residue socially." Jeremiah walked out of the building and felt eyes on him. He heard a phrase behind him, quiet but sharp. "Dodge that one." He wanted to turn around. He did not. He walked until his legs burned, then sat on a bench near the river and stared at the water like it could rinse him clean. Mira found him later in the library that week. "You're okay?" she asked quietly. "I'm fine," he replied. She held his gaze. "This department has a way of protecting its image," she said. "Do not let them make you reactive. Keep everything in writing." "I am," Jeremiah said. Mira hesitated. "And, Jeremiah," she added, lowering her voice, "do not meet Hargrove alone if you can avoid it." Jeremiah's stomach tightened. "He asked you to meet?" he asked. Mira nodded slightly. "He's asking questions about you. Your background, your funding, your support." "Why?" Mira looked away for half a second. "Because your presence is inconvenient." 2 weeks later, the faculty colloquium was announced. Jeremiah was not invited. Title: Refinement of Nonlinear Constraint Minimization Under Variable Boundary Conditions. Author: Professor A. Hargrove. Mira forwarded him the abstract with a single line beneath it. "You need to see this." Jeremiah read the abstract slowly. It was his structure: reordered, reworded, uncredited. He attended anyway. The colloquium was held in a smaller theater, mostly faculty and select postgraduates. Jeremiah sat near the back, not hiding, just present. He wanted to see Edward's face. Hargrove stood at the podium, composed. "What I am outlining today," he began, "is a refinement developed through recent classroom exploration." Classroom exploration. Jeremiah felt the betrayal not as shock, but confirmation. It landed like a weight he had been expecting to pick up. Hargrove walked through the method. He changed variable names, adjusted notation, rearranged the sequence, but the spine was unmistakable. Jeremiah watched faces in the room. Some were impressed, some were bored, none were alarmed. That was the point. Theft that looks like normal academic development is the easiest theft to commit. Edward applauded first. Jeremiah did not. When the applause faded, Hargrove took questions. A senior lecturer asked about the boundary collapse assumption. Hargrove answered smoothly. Jeremiah recognized his own phrasing twisted into someone else's voice. After the session, Jeremiah approached Mira. "You saw the board that day," he said. "Yes." "And my email." "Yes." Mira's expression was tight. "I can testify to the timeline," she said, "but testimony is not always enough." "I have timestamps," Jeremiah replied. "Good," Mira said, "because he will claim collaboration. He will claim you inspired him. He will say you should be honored. Jeremiah swallowed. He already did, he said quietly. Mira nodded once. That is how they steal, she said. They reframe theft as mentorship. That night, Jeremiah received another email. Subject, Scholarship Status Review. It was brief. The committee wished to meet regarding ongoing concerns about fit for advanced track workload and departmental cohesion. Cohesion. That meant he was being framed as disruptive. He went to the meeting with his folder. This time, the chair's tone was cooler. We have received feedback, she said, that your approach to academic engagement has caused discomfort among peers. Discomfort. Hargrove sat beside her, still observing. Edward sat across, hands clasped. Jeremiah kept his voice steady. What feedback specifically? He asked. The chair glanced at the file. Reports of aggressive competitiveness, she read. Reports of confrontational behavior. Jeremiah felt his throat tighten. Based on what? He asked. Hargrove spoke gently. Jeremiah, he said, using his first name as if it were a kindness. Sometimes when someone enters a space not designed for them, they misinterpret healthy challenge as hostility. We do not want you to feel perpetually under siege. Jeremiah stared at him. You stole my work, Jeremiah said evenly. The room went still. The chair's expression shifted. Edward's eyes narrowed just slightly. Hargrove's face did not change. I'm concerned, Hargrove replied softly, that you are spiraling into accusation as a coping mechanism. This is exactly what we meant by undue strain. Jeremiah realized then what was happening. They were moving the frame, from theft to mental stability, from evidence to emotion, from facts to a story about a scholarship student who could not handle pressure. Jeremiah opened his folder and slid a printed timeline across the table. My derivation was emailed to Dr. Patel at 1842 on the day of the lecture, he said. It was independently archived that night. Your abstract was circulated 2 weeks later. Your presentation used my method. The chair glanced at the timeline, but did not pick it up. We are not here to litigate faculty intellectual development, she said. Litigate. Jeremiah's pulse surged. So what are we here for? He asked. The chair folded her hands. We are here to determine whether continued funding is appropriate. Jeremiah felt cold. If they cut his scholarship, he would lose housing within weeks. He would drop out. He would go home to Birmingham with no degree, and a story that would sound like excuse to anyone who wanted to dismiss it. He forced his voice to stay calm. If you remove funding, he said, on the basis of discomfort, you will be punishing me for being targeted. Edward smiled faintly. Or, Edward said, we will be protecting standards. Standards again. Jeremiah looked at the chair. I want the decision in writing, he said. The chair blinked. Of course, she replied, voice tightening. Jeremiah stood to leave. Hargrove spoke as Jeremiah reached the door. Jeremiah, he said softly, I want you to consider something. There is the path of conflict, and there is the path of progress. If you approach me with humility, you could benefit greatly. I could supervise you, I could guide you, I could position you for publication. Jeremiah paused. He turned slowly. You want me to be grateful while you erase me, he said. Hargrove's smile remained calm. I want you to stop harming yourself, he replied. Jeremiah left without responding. He walked straight to the library and sat at his desk with shaking hands. He opened a new document and began building the case the way he built everything. With sequence, with receipts, with clean language that could survive scrutiny. He pulled the original email chain to Mira. He pulled the archive logs. He pulled a recording from office hours where Hargrove had said, Email me your full approach. I want to examine it privately before you circulate it. Jeremiah had recorded it because he had learned quickly that memory is not proof. He compiled everything into a single folder. Then, he did something he had avoided all term. He searched the department's internal publication database for Hargrove's past work. He looked for patterns. He found them. A paper from 3 years ago contained a method that looked eerily similar to a postgraduate thesis from the same year. The thesis was not cited. The student's name appeared nowhere. Jeremiah could not prove theft from that alone, but it was a flag. Then, late one night, as he shelved books in the quiet, a woman approached him. She looked older than most students, postgraduate perhaps, tired eyes, careful posture. "You're Jeremiah," she said softly. He froze. "Yes," he replied. She hesitated. "Don't say anything here," she murmured. "Meet me tomorrow outside by the back entrance, noon." Jeremiah's stomach tightened. "Who are you?" he asked. She gave a small, humorless smile. "Someone who trusted the process," she said, "and paid for it." The next day, Jeremiah stood by the back entrance of the library, hands in pockets, scanning faces. The woman approached with 2 coffees. "My name is Anna," she said, "third-year doctoral candidate, data modeling." Jeremiah nodded cautiously. Anna looked around before speaking. "He did it to me," she said quietly. "Hargrove." Jeremiah's throat tightened. "What happened?" he asked. "I wrote a method for a modeling constraint," she said. "I shared it in supervision. He praised it. He asked for drafts. 2 months later, he presented it at a conference. I was acknowledged in the thanks section. No authorship, no citation of my thesis, just thanks." "Did you challenge it?" Jeremiah asked. Anna laughed once, bitter. "I tried," she said. "I was told I was misunderstanding academic norms. I was told my emotional response was proof of immaturity. I was told my funding would be reviewed if I continued to disrupt the department." Jeremiah felt his jaw tighten. "Do you have proof?" he asked. Anna shook her head. "I have emails," she said. "But he was careful. He never wrote anything explicit. He never said the words. He let me believe it was collaborative. Then, when it mattered, he presented it as his. I was too naive to archive drafts independently. I trusted the university systems." Jeremiah's chest tightened again. "How many others?" he asked. Anna stared at him. "More than you think," she replied. "Enough that we all know the shape of it, but not enough that anyone wants to be first to burn the department." Jeremiah felt a slow clarity settle in. This was not a single villain. It was a machine with one polished face. "Why are you telling me?" he asked. Anna swallowed. "Because you have something none of us had," she said. "You kept records. And because if they break you now, they will use you as a warning." Jeremiah stared at the coffee in his hands. "What do you want from me?" he asked. Anna's eyes sharpened. "I want you to survive," she said, "and I want you to be smart. If you go to war without allies, they will label you unstable and remove your scholarship quietly. If you go with evidence and witnesses, they will still protect themselves, but they will have to pay something." Jeremiah exhaled slowly. Anna continued. "There is an external examiner coming next month," she said. "Professor Sienna Markham. She is ruthless. She does not care about your department's reputation. She cares about procedure. If you can get your evidence in front of her, she cannot ignore it." "How?" Jeremiah asked. Anna smiled faintly. "Not through official channels," she said. That night, Jeremiah sat in his room and built a dossier. He was careful with language. He avoided emotional adjectives. He wrote in timelines, dates, times, documents. He attached the email to Mira with timestamp 1842. He attached archive logs. He attached a transcript of the office hours recording. He attached the colloquium abstract and his own derivation side by side, highlighting mirrored phrasing. He attached statements from Anna, formatted as a witness account, signed and dated. He asked Mira for a formal statement. Mira hesitated, then agreed, but only if her statement was protected until necessary. Jeremiah understood. Even allies risked retaliation. The next week, Hargrove asked Jeremiah to meet him. The email was polite. "Jeremiah, I would like to offer support and guidance. Let us meet in my office at 5 p.m. We can discuss a path forward." Jeremiah read it twice. He replied, equally polite. "Thank you, Professor. I am available if Dr. Patel can attend as well." Hargrove replied within minutes. "That will not be necessary," Jeremiah replied again. "I prefer meetings with a witness present." No reply. The next day, Jeremiah received another email. Subject: behavioral concern. The department chair requested a meeting regarding interpersonal conduct and staff interactions. Jeremiah stared at the screen. They were tightening the frame, from academic to behavioral, from evidence to character. He attended the meeting. The chair's tone was firm. "Professor Hargrove has expressed concern about your refusal to engage constructively," she said. "Constructively means privately," Jeremiah replied. The chair frowned. "Constructively means respectfully," she said. Jeremiah felt anger flicker, but he kept his voice level. "I am requesting witnesses because my scholarship is under review and allegations have been raised against me," he said. "It is reasonable to keep everything documented." The chair's eyes hardened. "Do you believe faculty are conspiring against you?" she asked. There it was, the mental stability trap. Jeremiah chose his words carefully. "I believe process is being used selectively," he said. "I believe documentation protects everyone." Hargrove, seated calmly beside the chair, sighed softly. "This is exactly what I feared," he said. "Hypervigilance, persecution thinking. It is not uncommon when students feel out of their depth." Jeremiah stared at him. "My depth is not the issue," he said evenly. "Your integrity is." Hargrove's expression remained calm. The chair spoke. "We are recommending you engage with student support services," she said, "for your well-being." "Well-being is a weapon." Jeremiah nodded. "I will consider it," he said, "and I would like this recommendation in writing." The chair blinked, annoyed. "Of course," she said. Jeremiah left. He walked through the corridor under the portraits and felt for the first time how much the building was designed to make you feel small if it decided you were inconvenient. That evening, Edward approached him outside the lecture theater. Edward's voice was quiet, almost sympathetic. "You're making this worse," Edward said. Jeremiah kept walking. Edward matched his pace. "You think you're fighting injustice," Edward continued, "but you're just proving you can't handle pressure." Jeremiah stopped and turned. "What do you want?" Jeremiah asked. Edward smiled faintly. "I want the department stable," he said. "I want standards protected. You could have had a good story here, Jeremiah. Scholarship kid makes good, but you're turning it into something ugly." Jeremiah's jaw tightened. "You mean I'm refusing to be erased quietly?" he said. Edward's smile thinned. "Be careful," he said. "People like you don't get second chances here." People like you. There it was, finally, slipping out. Jeremiah watched Edward walk away, posture perfect, untouched by consequence. Jeremiah went back to his room and did not sleep. He replayed everything. The lecture, the committee, the accusation, the colloquium theft, the well-being weapon, Edward's warning. Then he thought of his mum's text. "You good, Jay?" He thought of his sister, 12 years old, telling her friends, "My brother goes to Ashbourne." He thought of how easy it would be for the university to cut him loose and call it a mismatch. He thought of Anna's tired eyes. He opened his laptop and prepared for the external examiner. Professor Sienna Markham arrived on a Tuesday. She was smaller than Jeremiah expected, with a calm face and eyes that did not waste time. She greeted faculty with polite neutrality and students with direct attention. She carried herself like someone who had seen enough academic theater to be bored by it. Jeremiah did not approach her immediately. He watched for the right moment. He had learned that timing mattered. He did not need drama. He needed an unavoidable process. After the examiner's public session, when faculty mingled in the corridor and students hovered uncertainly, Jeremiah stepped forward. "Professor Markham," he asked. She turned, eyes sharp. "Yes?" My name is Jeremiah Cole, he said. Scholarship student, mathematics and statistical systems. I know, she said. You were the one asked to solve the diagnostic problem. Jeremiah's pulse steadied. Yes, he said. I have a procedural concern regarding attribution and academic integrity. I have documentation. May I send it to you? Markham studied him for a moment. Send it, she said. Keep it factual. I will, Jeremiah replied. He sent the dossier that night. He did not embellish. He did not accuse with emotion. He attached the timeline, the logs, the transcript, the mirrored phrasing, the witness statement. He went to sleep feeling sick, not fear, anticipation. 2 days later, the department chair summoned him. This time, the room included Markham. Hargrove sat to one side, expression calm. Edward sat as student representative again, jaw set. Jeremiah realized then that Markham's presence had forced the department to formalize what it wanted to keep quiet. The chair spoke. We have received a complaint, she said, voice tight, regarding faculty attribution. Markham interrupted, calm. Not a complaint, she said, a dossier. The chair's face tightened further. Hargrove spoke smoothly. Academic development is iterative, he said. Mr. Cole's enthusiasm sparked a broader refinement. It is flattering in a way that he sees his ideas reflected. Flattering. Jeremiah kept his voice even. It is not flattering to be erased, he said. It is theft. Markham held up a hand. Mr. Cole, she said, answer one question. Did you email your full derivation to Dr. Patel on the day of the lecture? Yes, Jeremiah replied. Markham turned to Mira, who had been invited, visibly tense. Dr. Patel, Markham said, did you receive that email? Mira swallowed. Yes, she said. At 1842. Markham nodded. She turned to Hargrove. Professor Hargrove, she said, did you request Mr. Cole's approach in office hours? Hargrove smiled faintly. As part of mentoring, yes, he said. Markham slid a printed transcript across the table. In this transcript, she said, you state, email me your full approach. I want to examine it privately before you circulate it. Do you deny this? Hargrove's jaw tightened for the first time. I do not deny speaking, he said carefully, but context matters. Markham's eyes sharpened. Context is you asked for the work, she said. Timeline is you presented a method materially identical weeks later without attribution. That is enough to justify formal review. The chair's throat tightened. Professor Markham, she began. Markham cut in again. This is not optional, she said. If you wish the department's reputation protected, you will address it through procedure rather than suppression. Jeremiah felt something shift in the room. Not justice. Pressure. The chair turned to Jeremiah. Mr. Cole, she said, voice clipped, your manner in prior meetings has been described as confrontational. Do you understand how this affects departmental cohesion? Jeremiah stared at her. They were still trying to frame him as the problem. Markham looked almost amused. Departmental cohesion is irrelevant to the evidence, she said. Do not attempt to shift the frame. Edward spoke, tone controlled. With respect, he said, Mr. Cole has created unnecessary hostility. He's been recording staff accusing faculty. It's destabilizing. Markham looked at Edward. And you are? She asked. Edward straightened. Edward Langley, he said. Student representative. Markham nodded. Mr. Langley, she said calmly, your feelings are not the metric here. Evidence is. Edward's face flushed. Hargrove leaned forward slightly. Professor Markham, he said gently, we must also consider Mr. Cole's well-being. His behavior suggests hypervigilance. Markham's eyes hardened. Do not medicalize accountability, she said. Silence. The chair's hands tightened on the table. Markham continued. This will be formally reviewed, she said, and I will be requesting departmental records of supervision, publication drafts, and any prior attribution disputes involving Professor Hargrove. Jeremiah felt Anna's warning echo. "You're not the first." Markham stood. "And," she added, "Mr. Cole's scholarship should be removed from provisional observation pending outcome. It is inappropriate to penalize a student for raising evidence-based concerns." The chair's face tightened, but she nodded. Hargrove smiled faintly, but it looked brittle now. The meeting ended. Jeremiah left feeling lightheaded. Not victory. Friction. That is what real accountability feels like. Not applause. Resistance. Over the next 2 weeks, the department changed temperature again. Now it was colder, but careful. People stopped whispering near him, not because they respected him, but because they feared saying the wrong thing within earshot. Mira approached him one afternoon, eyes tired. "They've asked me for all my emails," she said quietly. Jeremiah swallowed. "Are you okay?" he asked. Mira gave a small, humorless smile. "I'm fine," she said. "But this is the cost. They will squeeze anyone near you to see who flinches." Jeremiah's stomach tightened. "I'm sorry," he said. Mira shook her head. "Do not apologize for demanding integrity," she said. "Apologize only if you stop." Then, on a Friday evening, Jeremiah received a new allegation. Subject: formal misconduct charge. The university claimed he had recorded staff without consent in a way that violated policy. Jeremiah stared at the screen. It was retaliation. They could not win on theft, so they shifted to process violations. He read the policy. He checked the law. He reviewed his recordings. He had recorded his own conversations for note-taking, which was permitted, and he had not distributed anything publicly. But policy could be interpreted. That was the point. He called Anna. "They're charging me," he said. Anna's voice was steady. "They're trying to intimidate you," she replied. "Do not panic. We prepare." "How?" Jeremiah asked. Anna exhaled. "We show the pattern," she said, "and we bring more voices." The misconduct hearing was set for the next week. Jeremiah compiled another dossier. He included policy excerpts. He included notes showing recordings were for personal documentation, not publication. He included the fact that the recordings were only referenced because Hargrove had already used the office hours interaction to claim collaboration, meaning the recording was defensive evidence, not harassment. He included messages from other students. Anonymous at first, then named. 2 more victims came forward, one a former master student, one a current postgrad. Both described the same arc: praise, private request for drafts, then disappearance, then publication, then told to be grateful. Jeremiah's room became a war room, not chaos, sequence. He printed timelines, he highlighted consistencies, he created a table of dates and outputs. He wrote a clean statement. At the hearing, the misconduct officer opened with a formal tone. "You are charged with inappropriate recording of staff," she said. Jeremiah replied calmly. "I recorded my own meetings for accuracy because my scholarship was under review and accusations were raised against me," he said. "I did not distribute recordings. I used them only to defend against misrepresentation." Hargrove spoke softly. "Students must learn trust," he said. "A culture of surveillance is corrosive." Markham, present again, looked at him with open disdain. "A culture of theft is corrosive," she replied. "Do not moralize your own misconduct." The misconduct officer hesitated, clearly not used to faculty being challenged. Jeremiah slid his policy excerpt forward. "The policy allows personal recording for note-taking and accessibility," he said, "and it specifically forbids distribution, which I did not do." The officer read, then looked at Hargrove. "Professor Hargrove," she asked, "did you request Mr. Cole's drafts privately?" Hargrove's expression tightened. Markham leaned forward. "I have also requested records of prior attribution disputes," she said, "and I have received preliminary findings that suggest pattern." The officer blinked, alarmed. "Professor Markham," she began. Markham's voice stayed calm. "This hearing is being used as retaliation," she said. "That will be noted." The misconduct officer swallowed. After review, she said slowly, we find the charge unsupported. No misconduct finding. Jeremiah exhaled. It did not feel like relief. It felt like surviving another attempt to push him off the board. After the hearing, Edward confronted Jeremiah outside. Edward's face was no longer friendly. You're burning the department, he said. Jeremiah's voice was low. The department is burning itself, he replied. Edward stepped closer. My father has given more to this university than you ever will, Edward hissed. Do you understand that? You think you're righteous because you keep files? You're a guest here. Jeremiah stared at him. I am a student, he said. That is not guest. Edward's lips curled. You're a scholarship, he spat. A program, a publicity brochure. Jeremiah felt his hands clench, but he kept his posture steady. And you're a product, he said quietly, just with better packaging. Edward's eyes flashed. You don't win this, Edward said. They will protect him. They will protect us. Jeremiah watched him walk away, and for the first time, he understood Edward was not just a rival. Edward was a shield. Legacy students made perfect witnesses for plausible deniability. If Edward called Jeremiah unstable, it carried weight in the rooms that mattered. That is why Edward had been placed in every meeting. That is why Edward had been allowed to speak. He was part of the mechanism. Weeks passed. Markham's formal review continued. It did not move quickly, because institutions rarely move quickly when their own reputation is at stake. Jeremiah felt pressure in every corner of his life. His scholarship remained active now, but the atmosphere around him was tense. People avoided him, as if integrity were contagious. He heard whispers about him being a troublemaker. He heard a lecturer refer to him as politically charged in a corridor. One night, as Jeremiah shelved books, his mum called. He considered letting it ring out. Then he answered. Hi, Mum, he said. Her voice was soft. Are you eating? She asked. Jeremiah laughed once quietly. Yes, he lied. She was silent for a moment. You don't sound right, she said. He swallowed. Just tired, he said. Jeremiah, she said gently. You're not alone, you know. You hear me? He closed his eyes. I hear you, he whispered. When he hung up, he sat at the desk in the empty library and stared at his hands. He thought of what the chair had said about undue strain. He thought of how easy it would be for them to turn his exhaustion into evidence that he could not cope. He forced himself to stand, stretch, drink water, and return to work. He could not afford to be visibly unraveled. That was the trap. A month later, Markham requested a final meeting. Jeremiah entered the committee room and immediately sensed the shift. The chair looked tense. Hargrove sat still, expression controlled but tight around the jaw. Edward was not present. That absence mattered. Markham spoke first. My review has concluded, she said. The chair's hands tightened on the table. We appreciate your thoroughness, she said, voice stiff. Markham nodded once. I have found sufficient evidence to support a formal conclusion that Professor Hargrove presented student-originated work without appropriate attribution, she said. Additionally, I have identified concerns in departmental culture relating to power imbalance, suppression of complaints, and retaliatory use of well-being language. The chair's face paled slightly. Hargrove's expression did not change, but something in his eyes sharpened, like an animal hearing a door click. Markham continued. I also requested records of supervision drafts and publication timelines, she said, and I have reason to believe this is not an isolated incident. The chair leaned forward. Professor Markham, she said, we must be careful with allegations. Markham looked at her calmly. I am careful, she replied. That is why I say reason to believe, because I have seen enough consistent patterns to justify external investigation. The chair's voice tightened. External investigation would be damaging, she said. Markham's eyes hardened. Integrity is not a branding choice, she said. Silence. Then the chair spoke again, choosing words carefully. We have discussed a resolution, she said. Jeremiah's stomach tightened. Resolution in institutions often meant containment. Markham gestured slightly. Professor Hargrove has agreed to step down from administrative responsibilities and take early retirement, she said. Hargrove spoke softly. For personal reasons, he added. Personal reasons. No admission, no public acknowledgement, quiet departure, institution preserved. Jeremiah felt anger flicker, then settle. He had expected this. Markham turned to Jeremiah. Mr. Cole, she said, your scholarship will be extended, your provisional observation removed, and you will be transferred to another supervisor for research placement. Jeremiah nodded slowly. And my work? He asked. Markham met his gaze. The colloquium paper will be withdrawn, she said. Your derivation will be formally recorded as student-originated, and you will be offered authorship in any future publication using that method. Jeremiah exhaled. It was something. Not perfect, but something. The chair cleared her throat. We hope this can bring closure, she said tightly. Closure. Jeremiah looked at her. This is not closure, he said calmly. It is containment. The chair's eyes flashed. Markham's mouth twitched slightly as if she approved. Hargrove stood. I wish you well, Jeremiah, he said softly. I hope you find peace. Jeremiah stared at him. You don't get to wish me peace after trying to erase me, he said. Hargrove's expression remained composed. Sometimes, he said, people see enemies where there are only misunderstandings. Jeremiah's voice stayed steady. This was not misunderstanding, he replied. It was a pattern. Hargrove's eyes narrowed slightly. Be careful, he said quietly, voice dropping. The world is not kind to people who cannot let things go. Jeremiah felt cold, threat wrapped in advice. Markham stepped closer. That is enough, she said sharply. Hargrove smiled faintly and left. Jeremiah walked out of the building and felt the air outside hit him like a wave. He realized he had been holding his breath for weeks. Anna met him later by the library. How did it go? She asked. Jeremiah's voice was low. He's leaving quietly, he said. No admission. Anna nodded, unsurprised. And your scholarship? She asked. Extended, Jeremiah replied. Anna exhaled. That's something, she said. Jeremiah looked at her. They're protecting the institution, he said. They're letting him disappear so the story disappears with him. Anna's eyes hardened. Then we don't let the story disappear, she said. That night, Jeremiah received an email from an unknown address. Subject: You kept records. Inside were 3 attachments: old thesis drafts, margin comments, version histories, different names, same pattern. Jeremiah's stomach tightened as he opened them. One file included track changes in Hargrove's handwriting. Another included an email chain where a student had been praised for originality, then later told their contribution was too minor for attribution. Another included a conference slide deck with a method lifted almost verbatim from a student draft. Jeremiah stared at the files for a long time. Then his phone buzzed. Another email. Subject: I thought it was just me. Another message. Subject: He did this in 2019 too. Jeremiah felt something shift inside him, not rage, responsibility. He called Anna. I've got files, he said. Anna's voice tightened. From who? She asked. Anonymous, Jeremiah replied. But it's real. It's track changes. It's drafts. It's enough to show pattern. Anna inhaled slowly. Then part 2 starts now, she said. Jeremiah sat at his desk and opened a new folder on his laptop. He named it simply Sequence, because sequence was what the institution could not argue with. Not outrage, not feelings, sequence. He created a spreadsheet of names, years, modules, supervision dates, publication dates, conference dates, and citations missing. He started reaching out carefully, not publicly, quietly, professionally. A former student replied within an hour. I can talk. I have emails. Another replied. I was told I would lose funding if I complained. Another replied. Short. He ruined my confidence. I left academia. Jeremiah stared at the messages, and felt the weight of what the department had tried to erase. Not just work, people. He thought about Edward and how Edward had said, "They will protect him, they will protect us." Jeremiah understood Edward's real fear now. It was not about standards, it was about exposure. If this became public, the university could not pretend it was a one-off misunderstanding. It would be forced to admit a culture of gatekeeping and extraction, and legacy students like Edward would have to explain why they participated. Jeremiah looked at the portraits upstairs in his mind. 23 faces, all certain. He realized something else too. If he went public recklessly, the institution would crush him with PR language and legal caution. They would say no formal finding. They would say personal reasons. They would say student well-being. They would say confidentiality. But if he went public with structure, with multiple victims, with documents, with timelines, with an external examiner's procedural notes, then the institution would face a different kind of threat, not noise, evidence. Jeremiah's phone buzzed again. A new message, subject, sealed report. He opened it, a single line inside. "There's a sealed faculty report from 2020, case number attached." It was buried. Jeremiah's throat tightened. Case number. He copied it into his folder. He stared at it as if it were a key. Anna called him back. "What is it?" she asked. "A case number," Jeremiah said. Anna was silent for a moment. "Then you don't just have a story," she said. "You have a trail." Jeremiah exhaled slowly. He looked out of his window at the campus lights. The buildings glowed softly, beautiful from a distance, like a place built for learning. He thought of the committee chair's face when Markham said external investigation. He thought of how quickly they had chosen containment over truth. He thought of how they had tried to label him unstable, then disruptive, then unfit, then dishonest. And he thought of what had saved him. Not brilliance, not luck, records, sequence. He picked up his phone and texted his mom. "Love you. I'm okay. I'm working hard. I'll explain soon." He placed the phone down gently and opened a new document. Not a complaint, not an emotional letter, a report. He began writing the way he always wrote now, calm and clean, because calm and clean was what survived. He wrote the first line and stopped, thinking. Then he wrote it again, clearer. In academic spaces where power is uneven, talent does not need permission. It needs protection. He paused, then added a second line. And protection is not hope. It is documentation. Outside, the campus remained quiet. Inside, Jeremiah kept typing, because the department had wanted him to disappear as a warning. And instead, he was becoming a witness. And witnesses, he had learned, are more dangerous than rebels. Because rebels can be dismissed. Witnesses bring receipts, and receipts create consequences.